And we are live. What's going on YouTube Live? It's your boy Billy Rowe. Today is Wednesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And if it is Wednesday, you should know what that means. It's time for the Wednesday word. That's Wednesday word. Jumping straight into it. Tonight's topic is all for nothing. As always, I like to explain what I mean by my topics. What do I mean by the topic all for nothing? What I mean is in life, sometimes we go through these long processes that end in failure. And it's easy when the process ends in failure and it takes a long time to get to the failure to think that that whole space in between when you started to the actual failure is all for nothing because it all ended in failure. But I'm going to challenge you on that belief if that is your belief. So tonight, I have three tools for you on the first row to talk about this all for nothing mentality and how we can address it and how we can improve our lives even in our failures. So jumping straight into it, the very first tool that comes to mind or came to mind when it was dealing with this topic of all for nothing was seeing past the disappointment. Seeing past the disappointment is so important because you have so much time, energy invested in whatever it is that you're doing that it eventually reaches to a failure. Because there's so much time and energy invested, it's easy to say, man, I did all this stuff. I did this right. I did that right. I did this right. I did that right. And then I did this one thing wrong. And now it's a failure and not to really pay attention to the one thing that may have caused the failure to take place. So what seeing past the disappointment allows you to do is it allows you to glean the lesson from the failure. This is the biggest tool for me because when you can glean a lesson from a failure, what it does is it allows the failure to not be in vain. If you don't learn anything from your failure, you're probably going to repeat the same steps that created the failure in the first place. So, this tool, what it allows you to do is it says, what can I get? What can I acquire from this failure? Sometimes we'll go through a long process and it's laborious and you got to really grind and then you still fail, and when you make that failure, what you do is you learn sometimes it's about having grit and not grind. And so the difference between grit and grind, for me at least, is about grit is about having that tough skin, that thick skin that says, hey, there's going to be some challenges here. There's going to be some setbacks here, but those are not going to be the reasons why I quit. That's what grit is. The grind is that work that you're doing day in and day out as it grinds away. So the difference is that sometimes you'll find that, hey, I can work day in and day out, day in and day out, and make that grind take place, but I don't have the grit. So when I do encounter adversity, I quit. I give up. I mean, that can be the cause of the failure. Sometimes what comes from a failure or when you're able to see past the disappointment is you get enlightenment. You learn about the steps that worked in your process and you learned about the steps that don't work in your process. So you may have made every other step was the right step. So if you make step one right, step two wrong, step three right, step four wrong, step five right, step six wrong, and so on and so forth, eventually it feels like you're doing twice the work for half the results. And so if you can see past that disappointment, what you're able to then do is say, okay, so step one was right. Here's where step two needs to be tweaked. And so when you go to make your next attempt, you end up with twice the work, but twice the results. And that's not always a perfect science, but at least it's a trial and error, and you can kind of find out what's working and what's not. And then the third thing that you get when you see past disappointment is not just grit, not just enlightenment, but you also get compassion. Um, and it's funny. It's almost, and I almost liken it to empathy versus sympathy. But compassion is like the marriage where empathy and sympathy meet. Because you're going through this experience, because you've invested so much time, because this is your baby, because of whatever reason, of whatever, um, you now know what it feels like to invest that time and that energy and to reach a failure. So that compassion aspect that you bring or that you acquire can approach to or can apply to not just your experience, but being able to see other people's experience and have compassion for the struggles that they're experiencing in their own journey. Hey, what's going on, cousin? Um, so that's the other aspect. But the compassion is a two-edged sword, and it's not a bad two-edged sword. It's like I can be compassionate about other people's experiences because I can empathize, even if I'm not doing those steps, but I can sympathize because I too have failed. But then compassion also works for yourself. It works internally for us because what compassion does when we can say, hey, I've gone through this experience, I know the work that I've put in, and I've failed, and I have compassion for myself. What then happens is I'm able to forgive myself for the failure and get back up, dust myself off, and make the moves that I need to move to make to be successful. So that's tool number one. See past the disappointment. That is a very huge, important tool. So I don't care if you don't get any other tool tonight, take that tool with you because this is very important for all or nothing or all for nothing. So moving on to the second tool. The second tool when it comes to all for nothing is that time is an investment. Time, our most valuable form of currency that every single human being on this planet has. Time. And when comes to all for nothing, the reason why it's important to understand that time is an investment is because if you again are going through this process that takes a lot of time to unfold just to come to a failure, you have to turn around and say, okay, I invested this time. What did I get from it? And this ties back into seeing past the disappointment, but this is where we really start to hone in on those lessons of what we've invested our time in. This is what prompts us to ask that question on, okay, I know I didn't just spend the last year of my life doing this for nothing. So what did I get from it? What did I learn? What experiences did I gain? What what skills did I gain? This is why it's important to see your time as an investment, because when you see it as an investment, it's almost like if you have a stock and you buy a stock at $10 and it goes up to $12 and you're like, great, I made $2, I'm going to still hold on to it, and then it goes down to $8. That stock is not worthless. That stock is worth less than what you paid for it, but it still has some value to it. It still has $8 worth of value, not the $10 that you put in, but there's still some value there. And so it doesn't make sense to say, that's only worth $8. I'm throwing that out. And that's why it's important to see your time as an investment so that even when you reach a failure that has taken a long time to unfold, you don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, that was a waste of time. Well, it becomes a waste of time if you don't look at the things that you can take from that process, the things that you can salvage from that process, and then use later to your advantage. So that's tool number two. Excuse me. That's tool number two. And then the third and the final tool about the all for nothing mentality and really how to overcome that all for nothing mentality is gathering your courage. Here's where all for nothing really becomes the finale of our journey is when we accept that we failed and we say, oh man, that was all for nothing, I'll never try that again. That just means we're now committed to the failure. So instead of all the energy that we've committed to try to make something that is of substance or to achieve success in a specific area, now we're saying we're going to take all that potential success that we had and we're going to just stop right here at failure. A lot of times this happens when we experience an all for nothing moment or an experience. A lot of times this comes in the form of the never again statements. Oh, I'll never do that again. I actually, when I was younger, I used to do network marketing, and I had a really good experience with it. And then I stopped doing it. And then there's been some other opportunities that I've had where I've tried to do it and I haven't done it. Um, but I never reached a place where I was like, "Oh, I'm never going to do that again." However, I am in a space now where that's not something that I want to focus my time, energy, and effort on. So when opportunities do come up to do network marketing, I'm like, hey, that's great. I love what your concept is, but that's not where I'm at right now. It's not that I'll never again be there, but that's just not where I'm at right now. So it doesn't make sense for me to say, well, I'll never again do it or I'll always do it every time it comes up. Anytime we start making these blanket statements where it's like, all people do this or all the time I'm going to do this, or I'll never do this ever again. Anytime we start making statements like that, we're taking an all for nothing approach. We may not perceive it that way, but the reason why I say it's an all for nothing is because we are basically saying, because I had an experience that didn't return a favorable result, I now am never going to try to recreate that experience. And at the end of the day, that does not feel to me like it makes sense. So those are our three tools that we have for tonight on the Wednesday Word for all for nothing. Let's recap on what they are. The first tool being see past the disappointment. Something always comes from failure. The second tool being that time is an investment. If you're going to spend your currency, even if it comes back to you depreciated, make sure you take that depreciated value and don't just throw it all out and waste your currency. And then the third thing being is gather your courage, seek um, basically seek what's available to you. You'll be able to find out what is available to you, and by gathering your courage, it allows you to remove that roadblock of, well, I'll never again, to, hey, this didn't work this time, but I'm going to continue to seek what I know is available to me. I just haven't figured out how to make it available to me. So as always with the first row, I like to share, or the Wednesday Word, I like to share a personal story that kind of got me thinking about this particular topic. And this is a really personal story for me. So I apologize if I kind of like stammer through it a little bit, but I was thinking about the fact of how life was for me after divorce. And it was really hard to go through years of a relationship, years of marriage, and then come to this place where it felt like it was all for nothing. Like, why did I even bother to waste my time? Um, and so I started thinking about this topic and really looking at how my life, even before I was divorced, but very much so after I was divorced, began to change. Um, and that unfortunately and fortunately caused me to look at this significant portion of my life. I mean, I had black hair goatee, not salt and pepper goatee back then. So I've spent an abundance of my time um, trying to really understand what that failure was and what I could take from the lessons of all that time. It was over 13 years of my life, so it doesn't make sense to say, "Well, dang, that didn't work." 13 years of experience and information and education out the door. Um, but it was hard. I will say it was hard because again, that time that was investment led to a disappointment or a failure, and that failure was disappointing. And so I had to really gather my courage to say, even though I know that I'm disappointed in this, even though that I know there's some hurt there from this, I want to explore and figure out what I can take and what I can use going forward. And the most fascinating thing from that time investment was the inspirational content that blossomed out of it. I could have literally never done a Wednesday Word ever again. I could have not done the things that I've been doing this past year. I almost revealed something I'm not ready to reveal to you guys yet. I could have done a lot of things. I could have not done a lot of things, but because I'm so reflective on those experiences and on the things that were good and the things that were bad, um, I'm able to pull a lot of information out and be completely transparent with my audience, so that I can give them the tools that maybe at the time I didn't take advantage of. And sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But going forward, I feel like a full arsenal of tools at my disposal to make the best life guiding and life changing choices that I can make in my entire life. And that is because I have removed that all for nothing mentality and said, this was all for something. Even though it didn't work out, even though I failed, This was all for something. And when you take an all for something versus an all for nothing mentality, what happens is you basically become a student of your own life. Every experience that you have becomes an opportunity for you to learn not just more about life in general, but more about you. And so that's what really got me thinking about this. I have a whole bunch of notes here of the never again statements. I'm never getting married again. I'm never doing this. I'm never doing that. And I really had to pull myself back and from a bird's eye view and just say, you know what? I don't want to use never again statements because I don't know what the future holds for me. But the last thing I want to do is, because of a time investment that I made here, miss out on a wonderful investment opportunity of my time in the future. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the Wednesday word today. I do have a show for next week already ready to go. It will, well, not ready to go. I still have to create it, but I know what the topic is. The topic is actually going to be sprint. It was the same time, well, my time is 7:30, but 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. That'll be on Wednesday, December 22nd. But other than that, I have some amazing news that I'm going to be dropping soon. I'm just waiting for like a couple more little things, and then I'll be dropping some really amazing news here on the first row. I really appreciate you guys rocking with me. As always, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. You know I'm happy to engage with you in the comments, whether it's in the live or on the replay for the first week that the content is up. But until the next time that I see you, one love, peace, and God bless. Thank you for sitting on the first row. And I can't see how to end the stream.